Hello, my name is Todd Gore. For this assignment, I read Trapped by Tintori, a book about the 1909 Cherry, Illinois mine fire. This event took place at the tail end of the Industrial Revolution, when coal was in high demand, but workers' rights and safety were still early in their evolution. Cherry, Illinois is located 100 miles outside of Chicago. The town was founded when the mine was established. Unlike many other mines, Cherry operated year-round, providing consistent work and wages. Although definitely a hard line of work, job availability drew workers to Cherry, many of them foreigners. For standards of the time, the mine was considered modern, some even calling it fireproof. I couldn't help but think of how the Titanic was called unsinkable. The Cherry mine was outfitted with electric lighting, an innovation for the turn of the century. However, due to cable deterioration, the mine was temporarily using kerosene lanterns as they waited for replacement wiring. This slide shows a diagram of the mine. Mining was only taking place on the second and third veins of coal. The mine had one main hoisting shaft, and the other was an air and escape shaft. Workers would be raised and lowered into the second vein of the mine via the northwest main shaft, the same one that brought the coal cars out of the mine. Those who worked on the lowest vein, the third one, had to walk through the tunnels shared by mule-drawn coal cars to be lowered via a separate hoist in the southeast shaft. One can see how egress in an emergency could quickly become difficult. November 13, 1909 saw the worst coal mine fire in U.S. history. With 480 mine workers in the Cherry mine, kerosene lighting triggered a fire on a nearby car of hay. Small fires were not uncommon, so there was not immediate alarm. However, in a short time, the fire spread. Chaos, confusion, tragedy, and heroism ensued. Mine workers attempted to extinguish the fire, and when they couldn't, many of them, as well as townspeople, worked feverishly to alert, evacuate, rescue, and/or treat those trapped underground. 13 rescuers were killed in one tragic instance. Outside response resources and spectators poured into the small town. The mine was temporarily sealed, unsealed. The fans were shut off, reversed. Special breathing equipment was brought in and used. Firemen worked feverishly, but eventually it was determined that the mine must be sealed to give any hope of extinguishing the fire. A week after the fire began, 20 survivors emerged. 259 people had perished. Factors that did or may have impacted this tragedy. I already mentioned the inoperable electric lighting and the use of kerosene. While lamps were legal to use in mines, kerosene was not. Once fire caught, the author describes a lack of alarm or formal standardized procedures for extinguishing it. Several other laws or procedures were not followed. A key one is the lack of a continuous escapement shaft from the top to the bottom of the mine. With the secondary hoist inoperable and the stairs having caught fire, third vein mine workers were left to traverse a fire and smoke-filled congested passageway to the singular exit. At the local level, there didn't seem to be clear response plans or procedures. The method for maintaining mine worker accountability in and out of the mine was either inadequate or not followed. Once the disaster escalated, several organizations and jurisdictions, including other mines, fire departments, the state, and the USGS, brought resources to bear, but it seemed reactive. The Cherry mine disaster did act as a catalyst to safety improvements that were underway. The workers were already part of the United Mine Workers Union, who was involved in the response to this tragedy. Mining was primarily regulated by the state. This event impacted the establishment of the U.S. Bureau of Mines. At the state level, it impacted the establishment of safety laws and regulations, and the creation of the Mine Rescue Station Commission in 1910, which led directly to 3 state mine rescue stations the following year. Lastly, the state passed a Liability Act that was a forerunner of workers' compensation regulation. I enjoyed this book and would recommend it as it provided context, developed the characters and narrative, highlighted tragedy, and touched on the impacts of this disaster. It was interesting how, for a portion of the book, the chapters switched back and forth from what was going on topside with what a group of trapped mine workers was experiencing underground. I do think that the author presented too many characters, as I struggled to keep track of all of them as the story unfolded. I also noticed there was a lack of in-text references or footnotes, especially given how much research the author apparently did. These are my references. Almost all the information came from the book Trapped. All the photos came from the website in the second reference, which is a very interesting one if you have an interest in learning about this event, but don't want to read the entire book. Thank you for listening.